these obsessive desires and thoughts wanting to control them, to, I don't know how to put it, possess them permanently.
And that's why you killed them.
Right, right.
It was like coming out of some kind of horrible trance or dream. I can only liken it to after, you know, I don't want to over-dramatize it, but to have been possessed by something so awful and so alien, and then the next morning wake up from it, remember what happened, and realize that basically, I mean, in the eyes of the law, certainly in the eyes of God, you're responsible. To wake up in the morning and realize what I had done, and with a clear mind and all my essential moral and ethical feelings intact at that moment, absolutely horrified that I was capable of doing something like that.
You really hadn't known that before?
There is just absolutely no way to describe, first, the brutal urge to do that kind of thing, and then what happens is once it has been more or less satisfied and recedes, you might say, or spent, that sense, that kind of energy level recedes, and basically I became myself again. I want people to understand this too, and I'm not saying this gratuitously because it's important people understand this, that basically I was a normal person. I wasn't some guy hanging out at bars or a bum, or I wasn't a pervert in the sense that, you know, people look at somebody and say, I know there's something wrong with him, and just tell. I mean, I was essentially a normal person. I had good friends. I led a normal life, except for this one small but very potent and very destructive segment of it that I kept very secret and very close to myself and didn't let anybody know about it. And part of the shock and horror for my dear friends and family years ago when I was first arrested was that there was no clue. They looked at me and they looked at the all-American boy, and I mean, I wasn't perfect, but I want to be quite candid with you. I was okay. I was. The basic humanity and basic spirit that God gave me was intact, but unfortunately it became overwhelmed at times. And I think people need to recognize that it's not some kind of those of us who have been so much influenced by violence in the media, in particular pornographic violence, are not some kinds of inherent monsters. We are your sons and we are your husbands. And we grew up in regular families. I would say that was generally the case, almost without exception.
All right, if I can understand it now, there's this battle going on within. There are the conventions that you've been taught, there's the right and wrong that you learned as a child, and then there is this unbridled passion fueled by your plunge into hardcore violent pornography, and those things are at war with each other.
Yes.
And then with the alcohol diminishing the inhibitions, you let go.
Well, yes, and you can summarize it that way, and that's accurate, certainly. And it just occurred to me that some people would say that, well, I've seen that stuff and it doesn't do anything to me. And I can understand that. Virtually everyone can be exposed to so-called pornography, and while they're aroused to it to one degree or another, not go out and do anything wrong.
Well, addictions are like that. They affect some people more than they affect others.
Well,
but there is a percentage of people affected by hardcore pornography in a very violent way, and you're obviously one of them.
That was a major component, and I don't know why I was vulnerable to it. All I know is that it had an impact on me that was just so central to the development of the violent behavior that I engaged in.
To this day, I don't know what started it. And the person to blame is sitting right across from you. That's the only person. Not parents, not society, not pornography. I mean, those are just excuses.
When you killed these men, afterwards, were you repulsed? Were you upset?
No, at the time, it was almost addictive. It was almost a surge of energy. I wouldn't have to worry about any of their needs or anything. I just had complete control of the situation.
It's a very difficult thing to describe. The sensation, of reaching that point where I knew that it was like something had, say, snapped. That I knew that I couldn't control it anymore. That these barriers that I had learned as a child, that had been instilled in me, were not enough to hold me back with respect to seeking out and harming someone. Building up of this destructive energy. Another factor here that I haven't mentioned is the use of alcohol. But I think that what alcohol did, in conjunction with, let's say, my exposure to pornography, was alcohol reduced my inhibitions. At the same time, the fantasy life that was fueled by pornography eroded them further.
It's a process. It doesn't happen overnight. When you depersonalize another person and view them as just an object for pleasure instead of a living, breathing human being, it seems to make it easier to do things you shouldn't do. I started having these obsessive thoughts when I was about 15 and 16, and they got worse and worse.
What were your fantasies about?
They were sexual fantasies of control, power, complete dominance. They became reality.
Was there pleasure in that fantasy?
There was excitement, fear, pleasure, all mixed together.
But as a young boy, and I mean a boy of 12 or 13, certainly, that I encountered outside the home again, in the local grocery store, or the local drugstore, the softcore pornography, what people call softcore. But as I think I explained to you last night, Dr. Dobson, in an anecdote, that as young boys do, we explored the back roads and sideways and byways of our neighborhood, and oftentimes people would dump the garbage and whatever they were cleaning out of their house, and from time to time we'd come across pornographic books of a harder nature than more graphic, you might say, more explicit nature than we would encounter, let's say, in your local grocery store. And this also included such things as, let's say, detective magazines and more hardcore.
Those that involve violence.
Yes, yes, and and this is something I think I want to emphasize, is the most damaging kinds of pornography. And again, I'm talking from personal experience, hard, real personal experience. The most damaging kinds of pornography are those that involve violence and sexual violence. Because the wedding of those two forces, as I know only too well, brings about behavior that is just too terrible to describe.
Not parents, not society, not pornography. I mean, those are just excuses.
I deserve certainly the most extreme punishment society has, and I think society deserves to be protected from me and from others like me, that's for sure. I think what I hope will come of our discussion is I think society deserves to be protected from itself, because because as we've been talking, there are forces at loose in this country, particularly, again, this kind of violent pornography, where, on the one hand, well-meaning, decent people will condemn behavior of a Ted Bundy while they're walking past a magazine rack full of the very kinds of things that send young kids down the road to be Ted Bundy.
If you were out on the street now, would you still be committing the crimes?
Probably. If this hadn't happened, there's no doubt I probably would be. I can't think of anything that would have stopped me.
But I'll tell you, there are lots of other kids playing in streets around this country today who are going to be dead tomorrow and the next day and the next day and next month because other young people are reading the kinds of things and seeing the kinds of things that are available in the media today.
Do you still feel those same urges? Do you still feel that compulsion, that obsession?
I wish I could say that it just left completely, but no, there are times when I still do have the old compulsions.
Quer dizer, ele tem a questão, ele usa 4 táticas, né, que a gente chama: mentir, manipular, fazer um constrangimento, assim, no sentido de impor a vontade e até a violência. Então, na realidade, como em qualquer alteração, você tem desde a sociopatia leve até a sociopatia grave, que é o serial killer. A questão é que o serial killer, esse vai para a cadeia. É o motoboy, aqueles casos que andaram tendo no sul, daqueles caras que pegavam sempre as mesmas crianças, meninos e tudo. Esse acaba um dia pegando, porque ele não consegue não repetir o erro, porque ele tem um prazer enorme naquela coisa de pegar a presa. É de 1 a 4%. 1% só é serial killer. O resto são... Ainda bem, mas isso não quer dizer que não haja um grande prejuízo. Vou te dar um exemplo. Por exemplo, o sociopata leve, por exemplo, 171. A gente fala tanto de 171. 171 é um sociopata leve. São simpáticos, sedutores. Você não vai me apresentar um sociopata leve, ou 171 que seja antipático. Você conhece?
De modo geral, são simpáticos.
São maravilhosos. Se você pedir cartão, te dão cartão. Se você pedir telefone, te dão telefone. Ainda dizem que estão com aquele carro emprestado, porque o dele é BMW, né? E que no dia seguinte ele vai pegar, que aquilo ali porque bateu. Ele inventa 1000 mentiras. Mas não é para impressionar porque está afim de você. É para impressionar, para poder te usar, para chegar a algum objetivo que ele quer. É totalmente diferente do homem imaturo ou do garotão que mente para ver se tira uma onda com a namorada.
Pessoas inteligentes, manipuladoras, zero de caráter.
Geralmente, os moderados têm uma desenvoltura social, uma desenvoltura social maravilhosa, uma fluência verbal maravilhosa. Eu sempre digo o seguinte: cuidado com as coisas que parecem boas demais. Gente, não são seres feitos para viver numa sociedade. Eu adoraria que a engenharia genética viesse com alguma coisa, mas são predadores. É como se você abre, sei lá, vamos botar então lobos convivendo com a gente na praia.